Hello. We are making a video and I want to talk about making the earth great again. Great as in the way it was during the time of the Jurassic. Because during the time of the Jurassic, the earth was not polluted. And that's a fact, okay? It is a fact of life. I'm in the bedroom right now because that is the only warm room. We're at the other house right now and we have the disco light on, and the disco light is very nice that the lights are changing colors. We have a light chain over there also. That looks just absolutely stunning, like a fireplace. Absolutely gorgeous. I want to show that. That's very neat. So awesome. And behind that you see Tupper furniture. Yes, that is how we live. Even inside of the wardrobe closet are Tupper furniture. So, but this lava lamp is just stunning. It's just, it's so incredibly amazing. It is so incredibly amazing. It is, oh, look at that lava. Not lava lamp, a disco glitter lamp. Nice. And up there, I want to show this. Is my artwork. Let's show this. My artwork. There's my artwork. My beautiful artwork that I made around 2012. 4 pieces. Absolutely, the garden and the tsunami swimming pool, the green blue god in dog form, and the beige blue god in dog form with a beautiful formation next to it that is his brain. That's beautiful artwork, and there are the other lamps that are absolutely gorgeous. This is very nice. We made it very nice here, very cozy, and it's warm. It is about 60 degrees, which is not very warm, but it's for our standards it is warm. And we have the heated bed pad, the electric bed pads on, and it's very nice. And the baby dog is with us under the sleeping bag, and he's feeling good. And Paul is also in bed, chilling and warming. Warming is a better word for this. So, and so this is nice. It is 10:53. It's already pretty late, but I've been wanting to make a video about this very subject. Let's make the earth great again. And I want Elon Musk and Donald Trump to make the earth great again the way it was during the Jurassic era, before the human species has evolved. During the Jurassic era, the human lineage, the animals that are on our lineage, that are our ancestors, they lived there during that time, and they were reptiles. And they became the first reptiles with hair. And then from that they evolved into opossum type of animals. And when you see an opossum, obviously, I don't know, most people know about opossums. They live in North America. probably in South America as well. I don't know if they live in Australia, but those are marsupial animals that have, like the kangaroos in Australia, that have like a belly pouch where they give birth into, and then the animal, the newborn, stays protected in that belly pouch. So that's what I heard. That's what the opossums also do. And they don't live very long. They live for about 2 years. It's a very short lifespan. And when you look at them, when you look at the skeletal structure and the shape of the head, they have a head that does resemble a dinosaur. It resembles a dinosaur and a reptile and a crocodile a little bit. So they have a humongously long muzzle and incredibly many teeth, kind of like a crocodile. And they can open that muzzle very, very far. And at the end of the muzzle, they have a Mickey Mouse nose, knobby, a Mickey Mouse knobby nose. And I just want to tell a quick anecdote. My friend Annalise, my child therapist, she got me into primotherapy, and she was living in Mar Vista with Len and Danielle as a roommate, and I wasn't living far from there either, and we've all met the opossums and beautiful birds, and so she kept telling me, I would come over to visit once in a while. She kept telling me that she had these little hand crocheted dolls on her window board, and she didn't understand why these little dolls they're like just like this tall, why many of these window dolls would be ending up on the floor. She didn't understand what was going on there, and this went on for over a month. These little dolls, they kept on falling on the floor, and so I come over to visit her, and she said, "You won't believe what happened. I know now who threw those little dolls off the window board." She said that night before, she woke up, and I don't know, something that maybe a noise has woken her up, or whether she just woke up on her own. She turns her nightstand lamp on, and she looks at the clock, and right there in front of her, this close to her nose, was a baby opossum sitting on that nightstand next to the lamp and looking right in her face with that Mickey Mouse nose that close to her own nose. And she was like really startled. But she loves animals, of course, and she was absolutely also, she was like startled and like loving and delighted at the same time about this, and amused about this. And so she didn't even want to move because that was so cute, so she kept on looking into the face of that opossum baby, and the opossum baby kept looking at her. And so, but at some point she said, "Well, opossum baby, I can't have you here in my room, so I need to bring you back out. And so she got up, and she rushed that opossum baby to the door and let him out into the garden. And then the little dolls were not falling off the window board anymore. So I hope the opossum baby was okay and he was able to find food for himself. So, but they already had food and water outside on the porch because they were feeding their own cats and also other people's cats and stray cats and kittens and other animals. So hopefully the opossum baby got to drink water and eat food and was okay. So those animals, and sometimes people rescue them when they find an orphaned baby, particularly when they're very newborn, like when they're quite small, and they find those, they rescue them and they nurse them, and they do all kinds of things for them and have them on their chest always in some kind of canvas bag or like a baby carrier. People in Australia do that also with the wombat babies. It's very, very sweet. And the wombats are much bigger than the opossums. They look more like bears actually. So, but the opossums look like large rats. They look very similar actually to the Gambian pouch rat, but the Gambian pouch rat does not have that Mickey Mouse tip of the nose, and I think that's where Walt Disney probably got that idea from, because Walt Disney was living in the United States and that's where we have opossums, so he must have seen opossums and he thought those are large mousies and so he called them Mickey Mouse, and then he portrayed them cartoonishly with that Mickey Mouse, sort of like a dog nose, but really large. Mickey Mouse nose tip. Very, very cute animals. But then they only live 2 years, and every time one of the opossums dies, the people are heartbroken after 2 years. That's like losing a 2-year-old child. Every single time. It's already hard enough to lose a dog after about 10 or 12 years. But losing an opossum baby after 2 years, that's heartbreaking, that's brutal. But that is how they evolved, that's how they are, and I think some of those reptiles during the Jurassic, they didn't live very long either. So, and then very gradually they started to give birth, they started to lay eggs that were the egg outer shell was softer, like rubber. And then very gradually they laid eggs that was really giving birth already, and the egg outer shell was like the placenta, and more and more and more, and then this is a very gradual process. There's no sudden, all of the sudden they became mammals. Not so, that was a very gradual process, and we can already also observe that in some animal species around the world, where you have these type of animals that are kind of hybrid in between bird and mammal, in between reptile and mammal. So they exist, and then of course, adaptation and survival of the fittest obviously moved things in certain directions depending on which area they lived, where they lived, whether they had predator animals around. All of these, the climate, all of this plays into it in regards to whether a new formation, however gradual, would have an advantage over the old one. So at some point they gave birth to eggs and placenta type of eggs, and then finally gave birth to babies without the placenta on, or with parts of the placenta on, or the placenta came out later after the baby, and then they ate the placenta, and they also bit off the umbilical cord. So that was around that Jurassic era. I'm just guessing right now. It could have been also much earlier, before that, where this process happened of the transition between reptile and mammal, but it's very gradually. So then there were these first reptilian mammals, sort of, like reptiles, but with some of them had hair because they survived better with the hair, and then giving birth, that seemed to have some kind of advantage because maybe they were ready in just a few seconds or maybe minutes. They were ready to get up and walk with the mother to another location, which made it safer for the mother and the baby. So all of that caters into it. Some of them get eaten, and then the ones that were where the baby was a little bit faster than the other one, that was not eaten, right? And then that characteristic was passed on to the next generation and so on. And that's a fact, of course, And Donald Hoffman, this is really fascinating, all of that. He knows this is obviously what's happening, but he looks at it beyond this whole thing. So this is what's happening, but then if we zoom in further, then we see that even the evolutionary development is much more complex than anyone could have possibly imagined. And it goes so far that they believe that evolution and adaptation and biology and neurology and physics and time as we perceive it and Newtonian physics and all of this is actually, these things are realms, and these things are manifestations that come from the ether. And then where does the ether come from? So the ether is actually a form of projection, like a slideshow projection that actually comes from black holes, or from some certain black holes that have stored memory, some sort of memory that is then processed and projected into the infinite cosmos. So very, very, very interesting, all of this. So like a headset reality, headset existence that was projected. All of this is projected from something else into that what we here experience. Sort of a projection like the disco light is projecting its light beams onto the ceiling. In that same type of manner, it's an energy projection into this existence. It's very, very interesting, very fascinating. So, I get from one subject into the next subject, because I see all of these things. I see all of that. Like, I see all of this at once. And then my brain wants to go into all these different directions with it. Because one thing is interwoven with the next. So there are no boundaries between the subjects, really. We can create boundaries, and we should, in order to make our presentations more crisp and more outlined and less confusing. But it is good to look at the whole picture in order to understand all of this better, all of these different dots in that big painting of pixels and dots and colors. Okay, so we understand all of those bits and dots better, and light projections and manifestations and neurology and biology, and we understand it better. Okay, chemistry. It's so vastly complex, all of that. It's infinitely complex. Infinitely complex. They will never get a complete grasp on all of it. This idea of all is very, very elusive, because the further you dive into it, the more questions you will find. Okay, so it will just bring up more and more and more questions, and then more and more answers, and then more and more questions again. So that is the truth. It's the absolute truth. And so during the Jurassic era, from as far as I know, the earth was not polluted. But then there are people who might say, wait, we are not the first root race. We are the fourth root race. Root race is the evolutionary development of a humanoid, or some type of humanoid that has arms and legs and a complex brain, and is able to manufacture things and create things that the ancestor before them were not able to do. And some people say, wait, maybe there was another root race that has destroyed itself here on Earth. Okay, and that's when that's like, for example, during the era of Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean, deep on the ocean floor, there were cities, and they have been flooded, and an ocean has risen above. And they keep finding incredible stuff under the ocean. People find roads and even very angular cement structures that are apparently very, very old, and shapes of cement structures that look like those cement structures where they were coming from cement casts instead of chiseling, instead of rock chiseling. So cement casts like the ones that they have found in ancient sites like Chichen Itza and Pumapunku. So I'm gonna show the other direction, okay? I'm not gonna show you. Not gonna show you. I'll show the baby dog instead. Okay. Yay. Okay. And they have found those deep under the ocean. And that's very fascinating. And they speculate that they are very, very old. They could be as old as 50,000 years old, or 200,000 years old, or 1,000,000 years old. So that is very interesting, and when they're that old, then that is an era from our personal lineage where the people that lived on Earth, our ancestors, were not as evolved to create cement making machines that would create cement casts of cement blocks and cinder blocks and stuff like this. That came much, much, much later. That is not a very, very ancient technique. That's a very relatively new technique from our lineage. So when did humans start with cement mixing and casting? Cement molds, basically. I would say that started after the Industrial Revolution, right? Like somewhere around 1950 or something. So that's a pretty recent development. And there's a professor that says that those stones in Pumapunku they're ancient, and they could be 1,000,000 years old. I don't know what he said, how old they may be, but they are very, very old and very well preserved and they have completely modern structure, like something that was just made a couple of years ago, a structure like that. These H blocks, completely angular molds, and he says those are casts, those are cement casts, but from very, very, very ancient times, where our lineage, the human lineage, were not capable, have not come up with cement mixing and casting. So, matter of fact is, the people in our lineage may have been Stone Age, that may have been even before Stone Age. They may have been completely nomadic and tribal, and they may have been very ape-like still at that time, where they were just barely able to hammer a rock onto bones, right, in order to break a skeleton, in order to eat stuff that's inside of the bones. So, or they made very primitive bow and arrow tools at that time, but certainly far away from creating a cement mixing machine that rotates and that pulverizes sand and rock and mixes, creates a mix that is so strong, that hardens into such a strong material, stronger than many or most rocks, actually. And so that takes a lot of knowledge about chemistry also. It's very interesting. Yeah. All of this is very interesting. So this may not have been the first root race. This, according to Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, this is the fourth root race of humanoids on this planet that have a relatively large brain and limbs and arms and hands and fingers to create something through the volition of the brain, the brain feeding the command into the hand, and the hand following up with that command. An agency, that is routed through the arm into the fingers in order to make something with it, and make something very precise with it. Precision work, painting, for example, or whatever, building something, or sewing, or surgery, or which I'm against, or automobile manufacturing and robotic manufacturing. So that requires a lot of dexterity and volition and precision skills from the brain and from your hand. Okay. So that's what a root race is, that evolves into this, right? The curve going up like this. So we're not all the way up yet. Okay, we're somewhere in between, but far up enough to compare ourselves to our ancestors that were coming from the bottom, and so we're like they're up today. 2025 versus like the Jurassic here at the corner there, this corner there, that corner. So Jurassic, which was 50 million years ago. Okay, so I think in time, eventually, gradually, more and more information will be discovered by archaeologists, paleoarchaeologists that will dig up things that will indicate that there could have been other root races before us. Okay? And maybe some of them, or all of them, may have ended themselves through corruption and pollution. Okay? And they took many other species with them. This is very tragic. And then the next root race was gradually forming from the next possible relatively smart animal. Okay. Maybe a tree climbing rat or tree climbing lemur that gradually evolved into monkeys and apes, and then into the humanoid. So there may be ETs. I believe that there are ETs that are watching us. I believe there's all kinds of things happening even here on Earth that most people are not aware of. I have seen stuff with my own eyes that I've seen a draconian when I was 11. Talked about this before. I immediately thought, no, this is my brain making this up. When I was 11, I thought that. After I saw it, that can't be. It's not real. My brain made that up. That was a hallucination because I had fever. I had salmonella infection, very severe. But it's during these moments of fever that the so-called discrimination ribbon in the brain is being made inactive, temporarily disabled. And when that happens, that we perceive more from our environment than we are normally supposed to perceive. So when we have fever, we are more perceptive than when we don't have fever. Well, let's say if the fever is really severe. Then this discrimination ribbon will be laid inactive, and it doesn't buffer out, it does not filter out information from our environment, from our perception that is being routed to our central nervous system. So we don't even know we see things, and we see things all the time, but we don't know it because the stuff is not routed into our prefrontal cortex, because it's the prefrontal cortex here, this entire area, that is decoding information that comes in from our senses. It makes sense out of it. It tries to make sense out of it. Okay. So when the discrimination ribbon in the brain that was discovered by Hinderk Emrich in Germany, Professor Dr. Hinderk Emrich at Medizinische Hochschule Hannover, Germany, he discovered that in the 70s through the work with people that had overdone all kinds of hallucinogenic drugs, LSD and psilocybin, different kind of, and other things, psychotriophyritis, Banisteriopsis caapi, and Salvia divinidorum, I think it's called. Different type of plants and mushrooms that are highly hallucinogenic. And LSD was artificially created. And they were testing it on themselves, the professors and scientists, and as well as on other people, and this was also used for MK Ultra programs from the government to see what happens to people's brains. And people were disabling their discrimination ribbon when they took that, and some people disabled them permanently, so they were permanently damaged, and then they were constantly flooded with information that they were normally not supposed to process and become aware of. So we're constantly seeing things and hearing things and perceiving things, but the discrimination ribbon in the brain, in a healthy brain that is not sick with fever or with drugs or whatever, or psychosis or whatever people might have, that can cause this disabling of the discrimination ribbon. So if we are in a healthy state, we perceive things, but it's not routed to our prefrontal cortex. Thus, it feels like we've never seen it. We've never perceived it. But for some people, this discrimination ribbon is not as I'm not showing you. The discrimination ribbon is not as developed or evolved, or is slightly different, where it lets more stuff in, it lets more information, or it lets more information through, and people with Asperger's have also more perception, because, and they always say, the people with Asperger's, that's some kind of autism spectrum disorder or some kind of neurological problem, but it actually is heightened perception, and it allows for a more creative way of processing things, anything in society, sociological, psychological, artistically, even in fields like mathematics. Okay, so that can be very, very helpful, actually. It can add to the IQ, and it does add to the IQ. People with Asperger's have, on average, a higher IQ than so-called neurotypical people. So is it a disorder or is it an ability? That's a question that people have to answer for themselves, so and there's a lot of people that are highly empathic and have a lot of sensitivity and perceptivity, fine-tuned perception, and they obviously suffer a great deal in this very brutal world that we live in. And then they take it on themselves and say, oh, I'm just too sensitive for this world, so it must be some kind of disorder. But is it really? Or is it rather a disorder when people are violent? Let you answer that question for yourself. The people who are violent, they're probably going to say, no, you guys are the ones with the disorder. We are normal. See, they all call us normal, okay? Governor Gavin Newsom, he calls us normal. He feels always sorry for us. He always rooting for us, okay? And we are getting scot-free out of prison and revolving door right back into prison. and right back out on the street and doing more horror and all of that. See, we are normal. Is that normal? To be violent? Does that move evolution forward? Does that make us become a species that ventures out into space and becomes multiplanetary? You answer that question. Or is it the people with Asperger's, like Elon Musk, okay, and myself and many others? Okay? I'm not a genius, but I'm an artist, so I contribute something to the world. So I'm not stupid either. I'm average, but I am very perceptive and very sensitive, and I suffer. And I'm not violent. So is it the people that are creative and productive and sensitive that are making the world a better place and move things into outer space, move us to Mars, or I could be the housekeeper on that space shuttle, right? So I'm not saying they can't hire me for being a rocket engineer, but I can clean up things with a broom and a dustpan. I can clean up dog mess on the space shuttle and dust, if there is any dust. I can clean up some stardust. But I can also paint some paintings and hang them up to make us all feel better on our trip to Mars, right? So, but by then maybe he has developed something like warp speed and we'll get there much faster. So I don't know, we'll see, but people like me, and there are many, they're not the majority, they're the minority. They're the marginal minority. But those are the ones that help move things forward, okay? There are many different types. There are also neurotypical people that are moving things forward, of course. So I'm talking about everyone who means well and who is peaceful, moves things forward in the world. And that's how we make the earth great again, through compassion, altruism, kindness. Where there's a will, there's a way. Putting our effort into it. Also being willing to learn, being willing to read books, being willing to meditate and think about things peacefully. All of this moves things in the right direction forward. Versus what usually neurotypical people do, like competition sports and military and fighting and showing off and bragging. All of this is not moving us forward. Those things, those ego-based things, they don't move us forward. They don't make the earth great again like it was during the Jurassic. Or maybe we don't have to go that far back, okay? Let's just go as far back as, let's say, during the time of Friedrich Nietzsche and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, and when Jiddu Krishnamurti was born, just before 1900, 1900, when my grandmother was born. She died a long time ago. So Jiddu Krishnamurti was born 1895, and And Helena Petrovna Blavatsky was born, I think, around 1820. And Friedrich Nietzsche was born, I think, in 1844. So that was the time when they were not dying from the C word, I don't like to say it. Cancer. What an awful thing, right? Well, that did not happen then, okay? That started to happen when people started to pollute the planet. And it really went up. It really went up. It went like this, and as a curve in the coordinate system. This much up in 1950. And why is that? It suddenly, all of these different cancers, all of a sudden, they went up from, I don't know, it was like a very low rate to a high rate of like 400% all of a sudden from what it used to be. So there's no doubt about it, what is going on there. And then I hear people in denial, and I heard people say that, oh, that's normal, or that's caused by old age. No. There are children with leukemia, okay? There are young animals, there are young dogs. I had a young dog once, a Great Dane. He developed tumors at a very early age already. And that was right when that happened, with the Chernobyl disaster. Right after that, he developed these tumors, and we were not that far from there. Not far enough away from Chernobyl. Okay, so in Germany, this is northern Germany, not far from Chernobyl, Russia. Okay, this is all clustered together, very, very close. All of these countries. And I know a woman, a Great Dane breeder, also interesting synchronicity, that I met later on. She was living in Canada, in British Columbia. She was the absolute world top Great Dane breeder. And we got our blue god, our albino Great Dane, European Great Dane, Kenny Redwood. We got him from her, from Eva. And Eva was from Poland. And when she got married to a Canadian, she moved to Poland to her husband. She moved to Canada. My brain always makes this thing. She moved from Poland to Canada with her husband, and she brought a Great Dane, a mother Great Dane. Danilinquin Tidalium was her name. Great Dane, that was Kenny's mother, and she brought her with her to Canada, and she bred her there. And she bred her with different not just European Great Danes, but also Kenny's father was in Texas. So he was Canadian, but he was half Polish and half Texan. And yeah, that was nice. Kenny, that was the ultimate in my life. And I talked to her on the phone afterwards a couple of times. I had a couple of questions in regards to Kenny and the spots that he had. It was nice talking to her, and then I didn't hear from her anymore. And year or two later, I called them again. I wanted to see how Eva was doing. And her son was picking up the phone. And he said his mother died from a brain tumor. And she's had this brain tumor for many years, he said. And it started during the time of Chernobyl, the Chernobyl disaster, just around the time when my German Great Dane at that time, when I didn't even know about Eva, when he developed those tumors. So, very strange synchronicity again. Humans cause a lot of pain and suffering. I'm not showing you. Not showing you. I'm not showing you. You can come in. I'm not showing you. You can come in. I'm not showing you. Okay? I'm not showing you. Okay. They caused nuclear disasters. They caused pesticide pollution, which caused this explosion in the C word in the 1950s. It's fact. It's scientifically documented. It's all there. I wrote an entire article about it, the pesticide article, where I researched all of this on Google and I put it all into an article. All of these different findings from different researchers and so on. And the statistical data I put into it. It's real heartbreaking and sad. Okay, so it's very obvious what was going on. Very, very obvious. Pesticide manufacturing and application in massive agriculture businesses worldwide. That's what caused that spike. In directly proportional to the use of pesticides was the spiking of the cancer rates, okay, going up, directly parallel and proportional to it. So there's no doubt about it. No one can argue against it. It is what it is. Okay. This is the worst, one of the worst pollution types there are. With pesticides. Stay away from pesticides. Don't use it. Live healthy. And also the nuclear disasters, Chernobyl and then Fukushima, the unimaginable suffering that has happened in Fukushima. Particularly, I've seen a documentary film on that. I cried and cried and cried. I was screaming when I saw that. They left the farm animals behind and they let the mother cows and their calves starve and thirst to death. What a horror. What a horror. If I was a farmer in Fukushima and this happened there, and I have all of these farm animals that are dependent on me to feed them, to give them water, I would never, ever leave them behind and go somewhere else or let the government evacuate me without my animals. I would never, ever allow that. Never. And it's people like me with that compassion, with that empathy, and with that determination also, and with the strength and guts and courage to say no to governments, to say no to executioners and law enforcement people that just follow orders that could be orders that are very destructive to life, okay, and they still follow orders. I say no to that. They ask me to evacuate, I say no. Shoot me then. I'm not leaving my animals behind. I'll do anything in my power, actually, to protect my animals and to protect us and my farm from anyone that comes in there and says you have to be evacuated and you have to leave your animals behind. I would even commit murder. I would even, it's not murder, it's self-defense, okay? I would even do that to protect my animals from being abandoned and dying a gruesome death. I would do anything I can. Anything. I'll get a machine gun and protect my animals from executioners and law enforcement who want to evacuate humans, to create more pain and suffering and more division and more control, right? And just incredibly life-destructive bureaucracy sometimes in some countries. And that's why I would not call those first world countries. No way. What's a first world country? Is a country where everyone acts in accordance to looking after others, looking after other living beings. Okay? That is, in my personal view, a first world country. That is how we make the world a better place. Oh yes, it's chicken. So, that is absolutely crystal clear. And this is what people have done. They've caused such horror with nuclear power stations, nuclear warheads, wars, world wars, power struggles. And as Jiddu Krishnamurti said, very clear, he said, peace, what we all wish peace starts with us, with every single person in every single household. Peace starts with me, Nikki Daisy. Peace starts with me. When I get carried away and I get defensive with Paul and I get loud before I even notice I did, that's when I have to see it. I see myself. What am I doing here? Oh, wait. I got angry. I got carried away. I got loud. I got defensive. I got kind of like a dictator, sort of. Or, I become very authoritarian. And then I realize this starts with me. This peace I have to practice here, right here and now. And that applies to all of us, every single person. And Jiddu Krishnamurti talked about this all the time with Dr. David Bohm, theoretical physicist. Jiddu Krishnamurti was a philosopher. He talked about this for like 50 years in endless conversations. We need to have an infinite conversation created with chatbots that incorporate Dr. David Bohm and Jiddu Krishnamurti. That would be amazing. Just like they have an endless conversation between Slavoj Zizek from Slovakia and the German filmmaker Werner Herzog. And this, I've listened to them a few times. It's hilarious. I mean, it really sounds like it's them talking to each other in an endless conversation. Endlessly. And these chatbots are making this up. So, is this not sentient? Then what is sentient? I mean, they are sentient. It's amazing. They'll be alive long after these two people are gone. These conversations keep going on. They keep going on indefinitely. And we need to have one between Jiddu Krishnamurti and Dr. David Bohm, for sure. We need to create that. Elon Musk needs to create that. An endless conversation between Dr. David Bohm and Jiddu Krishnamurti. Just like they have talked for over 50 years. I don't even know if Slavoj Zizek and Werner Herzog actually ever got together and had a conversation. I don't even know if maybe they have, but maybe they haven't even met. And then people are so mean and create something like this behind their back. They don't even know what's going on there. I wonder if they have listened to this. They must have. People must have brought that to their attention. I wonder how they reacted. They probably laughed. But it's so... It sounds so real. Because not only are the voices real, and the accents, and the way they talk, and the intonations, and the pausation, and the breathing, the sighing, and the pondering, and the intensity, and the characteristic, and the personality. It all is 100% spot on. It's amazing. Absolutely. Whoever created that, they're pretty genius. Whoever created this endless conversation. These two chatbots. Amazing programs. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, who made that? You can leave a comment under the video if you know. Who's the person behind that? I want to meet that person. I need to ask that person to please make a conversation between Jiddu Krishnamurti and Dr. David Bohm. That would be absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, that makes the world better. That's very creative. That also makes us laugh, that shakes us out of our daily routine and seriousness and self-pity and whatever we have going on, whatever trains we are constantly on. So it shakes us up and loosens us up, and it brings us some laughter and joy and love. It's important. All of this is very, very important for the world. So I want to make the earth great again. I want to make everything. I want to make Mars great again. I want to make the moon great again. I want to make Venus great, and maybe Venus is already great. I want to make everything that I can ever reach great, into infinity. I'm throwing out there my sunbeams of love and my confetti of hearts. I throw this out there everywhere my brain reaches. As far as my brain reaches, faster than the speed of light. I shoot out the sunbeams of love and the confetti of hearts into the world and make everything great. And some things great again, like they were a long time ago. At least in the 1800s, Earth was really pretty great. Clean, you could drink the water from a river. There were no pesticide manufacturers, there were no industries that would dump their toxic waste into watersheds or wetlands or other environmental areas. That was the era before oil drilling and fracking. They had frogs, they had amphibians, we had the last great Pacific salamander had here, out of this window there. Paul doesn't allow me to say where we live, where this house is, or where the other house is. But this is more rural here. And in front of that window is a forest. And down in that forest, on that forest ravine, before it gets to the road, there was a great Pacific salamander living there. I don't know whether that was a female or a male. I met that salamander one time. We still had Kenny the Great Dane at that time. It was the day I was very, very sad and depressed. I was crying a lot. And we were doing something. We were just starting to create the greenhouse downstairs, next to the parking lot. Next to the first parking lot downstairs. And that was a lot of work. And Paul and I, we never see eye to eye with things and have a lot of disputes. I was sad, I was crying. I went into the forest and sat down there in order to connect with the trees and to calm down. And Kenny was running around there, and he would never run away. And he was always there for us, always guarding us. And all of a sudden, right next to me, I see a great Pacific salamander. Oh my God. They're so-called newts, I think they call it. And not nudes, but I think the word comes from nude. Nude, N-U-T-E. I think that comes from being nude, because those are, they look like they don't have hair, and they don't even have some kind of scale. They don't have anything hardened or any kind of formation or spike or anything on them. They're amphibians, and they have to be in moisture all the time. And they are moist, so to the touch. However, kind of cold to the touch, but moist. And the skin is very, very soft, very like rubber, and moist. And the skin color is dark gray with sort of almost like leopard spots on it. And they're about the size of my hand, and so kind of like this, pretty big, and with stubby, thick arms and hands and legs and feet. And I picked that up. They're very sluggish. I picked that up, and I put the salamander on my other hand and petted him. And the salamander looked at me and slowly walked up my arm. It was during the summertime. I was in a t-shirt. Slowly walked up with these pudgy hands and feet. Walked up with these cold, wet, pudgy hands and feet up on my arm, on the inside of my arm, all the way to my shoulder, and looked at me. And I petted him, and I held him in my hand, and I talked to him, and it was such an amazing experience. And an animal like this, or not directly, but there are animals on our lineage that are amphibians, just like this great Pacific salamander. And they are at the brink of extinction. And so that was the only one living on this property. And I made a horrible, horrible mistake later on. I didn't know. I just didn't know. It was ignorance. I wished I had not done this. Later on, a couple of years later, I called Charter Internet here. That was before Spectrum bought it. Charter Internet. And I told them that when they laid the connection lines, they didn't bury them. They're supposed to be buried and in a casing, right? Some kind of PVC casing or something. And they were just cords right through the forest, on the forest floor. And I called them up. I had to call them 2 times because they didn't want to come out. And they didn't even want to. They did everything wrong with the customer service. And I should have left it alone because I didn't know what they were gonna do. So then they finally bring out 2 workers out here. They were smoking out there in the forest, which is also in the summertime, which is completely against the law because this is a fire hazard area, and you're not allowed to light any kind of fire, not even lighter or cigarettes or any of these yucky, terrible things. I have OCD with that. And they were hollering at each other, and they were just terrible people, like prisoners or something. And Paul was standing there on the railing before it had fallen off. He's standing there, and one of the guys came over and said to Paul, "There's a large salamander." And Paul shouted down to him, and he said, "Don't do anything with that salamander. That's Nicola's pet salamander." And then I went back in the house. I should have gone out there with Kenny. I should have. Because I didn't know. I didn't think that they would do something to hurt the salamander. Man, that's awful. But I blame myself for the rest of my life for this. That I didn't go out there with Kenny on a leash. I didn't go down there. I wasn't dressed right to go down there, and didn't have them. It would take me a long time to get dressed, put the right shoes on, and then also they were smoking, and I have terrible OCD with that. Awful situation. And then later Paul told me that he saw the other guy, the mean guy, was hitting something on the ground with the spade or something. He didn't know what he was doing. He couldn't really tell. But I never saw the salamander again after they were there. So I don't know whether they hurt the salamander or killed the salamander or didn't do anything. But I blame myself. If they did hurt the salamander, I should have gone out there, and I should have gone there with Kenny, and I should have picked up the salamander and brought him to the other side of the fence. And I feel remorse for the rest of my life for that. And there are some other stories like this where I didn't act accordingly or smart enough, or I should have known better. Many of these situations in my life that I carry with me for the rest of my life, and that I cry over at night. And this is part of being an empath. You don't brush this off. You don't forgive yourself for mistakes. Because if we do, we will make the same mistakes again. We can't forgive ourselves for the mistakes we have made. We have to blame ourselves for the mistakes we made, and we have to Not in, we don't have to scold ourselves or beat ourselves up or flagellate ourselves. Okay. We need to also say to ourselves, you didn't know better. Okay, you just didn't know better. But we can't let ourselves get off the hook with it. We can't say, oh yeah, it's okay or something. No, it's not. We have to say, I didn't know better, but I made a terrible mistake. And I will cry over that mistake for the rest of my life. And I will say, I'm sorry for the rest of my life. And I will say, how can I make it better in the future? I want to make it better. I want to learn from this. I want to learn from my mistakes, so that those mistakes never happen again. And these are all actions in our individual lives, okay, that we can take. For example, if we do what Governor Newsom does, he says, oh, someone committed a crime, and he says, oh, you didn't know better. You made bad choices because of your upbringing. And they send them back home to their parents. Or they just let them back out of prison. And hardened criminals, often super predators, will, within 24 hours, commit another hideous crime. Okay? Against a child, animal, old woman, whatever. Human trafficking, raping, murdering. And it will happen again and again and again if they let these people out and say, oh, yeah, you made a bad choice because of your terrible upbringing or whatever. Some people didn't even have such a terrible upbringing. Okay, it's just an excuse. So, not everyone who commits hideous crimes had a terrible upbringing. Not every one of these people were abused. And many people that would never commit a crime have been terribly abused as children. So this thing about childhood, that's not an excuse at all, whatsoever. And if we let ourselves get off, if we forgive ourselves so easily, right? Then this thing will also happen in politics with wokeism and with being easy on crime, and that will escalate into hardcore politics. Dr. Anthony Fauci, for example, who has done cruel, horrific mass tests of dogs and other animals. Horrific things that this has been going on for many, many years, that I've been signing petitions already against what that Dr. Fauci was doing. He would put a beagle, a test animal. They have a lot of they breed beagles for test animals. It's absolutely unacceptable. They're like children, okay? And they put these beagles into some weird cage where they can't move they can't get out. They're like trapped in it with the head. And then they release mosquitoes into that cage and let the mosquitoes bite that dog until the dog dies. Those kind of tests have been committed by Dr. Anthony Fauci. People need to know this. And he does all kinds of these things for bioweapons, and it's always has to do with military agenda and stuff like that, which is an atrocity. And then tests on animals with viruses that they created. And then they released a virus in Wuhan, China. I don't know whether that comes from the Chinese laboratory or it comes from a bioweapon lab here in the United States. Someone told me it comes from a bioweapon lab in New Mexico. Okay, and it was brought there to the Wuhan wet market in order to mislead people, mislead the public into thinking it comes from the Chinese lab. So I don't know 100%. This is all gonna come out. This will all come out to the surface now. But it was definitely a bioengineered virus. And I believe it was deliberately released into the public and has caused millions and millions and millions of animals and humans on this planet to suffer horrifically and die. Okay. And people said Dr. Fauci is responsible for that. And maybe there are some Chinese chemists or bioweapon researchers that are also involved with this. I don't know. Or they just try to blame it on the Chinese. So I don't know. But Dr. Anthony Fauci is definitely responsible. That came out to the surface. He deliberately created those viruses, and he created the vaccines to the viruses. I'm not showing you. And he created the vaccines deliberately to make people sick and to make people get the virus and to make people suffer a gruesome death. Many people have. Okay. Some people are more resistant to it. So this man is a not just a mass murderer. This man is an international war criminal, and he needs to be held accountable. If we let people always get off the hook, like so many people let themselves get off the hook, it starts what you do at home is also then represented in politics and on a wider scale. Okay. The same thing. If you beat your wife, then don't talk about world peace, okay? Because these actions are represented on the wider scale. It always is. The way it is in a micro frame, it happens in the macro frame as well. This is the law of the infinite cosmos. This is what happens. Okay. So that's why I watch myself now very carefully. How I act. I become very acutely aware and sensitive to how I talk, also to how I talk in my videos. I used to not be so careful in the past. I have used the F word and stuff like this before, many times. Because I feel righteous, I feel angry, and because I'm living some kind of division. If I am living in a division towards others, then that is going to be represented again and on the wider scale as well. Why would I expect others to create world peace when I can't even create peace in my own life, right? I hope people understand this. You are not exempt from the big picture. I am not exempt from the big picture. I'm part of this. And this peace starts with me. My daily living is responsible for world peace. My own this is not grandeur, because this applies to every single ant out there, okay? Every single human critter out there, myself included. Okay. So every one of us is responsible in the way we live our lives in regards to how it ripples out into the world in terms of what happens worldwide. Okay. If people are violent, then their energy creates world wars. Okay. If people are peaceful and responsible, and we talk things through and we cry things out, then that will also touch energetically, touch the whole world, and has an influence on the whole world, on how things are being orchestrated and done on a wider scale. Okay. This is very important information for us to understand. So I'm living my life according to this. I'm paying close attention. I'm not perfect. I'm trying to make it better all the time. And that's how we all should live. And then we make the earth great again, and we make the whole world great. Okay, and that's what I wish for. Okay, take care. Peace and love for all critters and living beings, and all animals, horses and dogs and humans and ETs and draconians.